Well, welcome. Welcome to our June meeting. Gosh, the year is almost half over, if you can believe that. We are excited tonight. Sorry, I don't know why. So much feedback. Is that better? Okay, sorry. Yes, tonight we've got a very lively meeting, I would say, about our property tax issue that we're all here to learn more about and hopefully maybe get some questions answered or realize that there are more questions than answers. So I'm Maria Mark, our president of Beaches Watch, and I'll be hosting the meeting tonight. So we are a membership organization, and we would appreciate you to consider either joining or renewing your membership. It's $5 for students, $15 for individual, and $20 for family. Thank you. Your membership helps support our organization so we can bring programs like this to you, as well as our candy forums, our Give Back Award that we give at the end of the year, as well as our Fletcher High School Memorial Scholarship, which we just awarded last month. So our meetings are videotaped. It'll be on our YouTube channel tomorrow, Beaches Watch 2012, as well as a link on our website. Talked about our membership, and we would now like to recognize our elected officials. So let's see, we have Commissioner Jessica Ring from City of Atlantic Beach. Thank you. We have Curtis Loftus, Mayor of Atlantic Beach. Oh, I'm sorry, what did I say? Curtis Loftus, you're now president, you're now mayor. I'm so sorry. Curtis Ford, Mayor of Atlantic Beach. Oh, Candace Kelly, City Commissioner of Atlantic Beach. Trying to do this by beaches. So we have Corey Byland, Mayor of Neptune Beach. And now we have Sandy Golding, City Council of Jacksonville. Greg Sutton, City of Jacksonville. And John Wagner, City of Jacksonville. And from State Representative Keon Michael's office, we have Destiny Davis and Lacey Mahon. Okay, did I miss anyone? Any elected officials? All right, thank you. So, finish our announcement. So, we have our local elections coming up in November. In Atlantic Beach, we'll have 3 seats open. We'll have the mayor's seat, and we'll have commissioners' seats 4 and 5. Jacksonville Beach will have council seats 4, 5, and 6. And Neptune Beach will have council seats 4 and 5 open. As you may know, the legislature has passed the property tax reduction ballot amendment. Some bullet points that we just wanted to touch on tonight that was in the amendment. It raises non-school homestead exemption to $150,000 in 2027 and $250,000 in 2028 with future inflation adjustments written in. It lowers the assessment cap on non-homestead properties from 10% to 5%. New residents will not receive the $250,000 exemption for 5 years. It limits the things that cities can spend ad valorem tax dollars on. And locally, our Representative Michael and Senator Yarborough both voted yes to put the amendment on the ballot in November. So, as I said, we'll be hearing more about property tax later in the meeting. Next month, we have our annual Beaches Police Panel following our 4th of July holiday here. So our guest speakers will be Atlantic Beach Police Chief Vic Gualillo, Jacksonville Beach Police Chief John Paul Smith, and our Neptune Beach Police Department will have a representative. We don't know exactly who that person will be yet. So we'd like to also know how you hear about our meetings, our Beaches Watch newsletter, hands. our website, Facebook page, our the news emails, Jacksonville Today, just spread word of mouth. Okay, great. All right. So now we have the good and the bad of the legislative session. And we're going to go ahead and start tonight before we actually get into the crux of the property tax issue. We're going to have Kevin Hogencamp, who is actually the interim Atlantic Beach City Manager, to come up here and touch on about half a dozen other issues that we think are very important to us as a local municipalities. So we'll have Kevin come up and then followed by Mike Staffopoulos of the City of Jacksonville Beach.
Thank you and good evening. I'm Kevin Brown, City Manager of the Beach City. And that's all. So whether you're a homeowner planning a backyard renovation, a small business owner looking to expand, or a resident who cares about the local environment, there are some big decisions that were made during the 2026 Florida legislative session that are going to directly impact local government operations. And yes, that's in addition to the big fat elephant in the room, the sexy beast that we'll get to in just a little bit. So I'm to address the non-sexy stuff, which tracks. So this year, the state's primary focus was statewide standardization. The legislature passed several laws designed to create uniform, predictable rules across all of Florida cities. Yes, once again, eroding local control, local voices, and local choices. As your local governments, it's our jobs to blend these new state updates into our day-to-day operations before the next fiscal year hits. And here's some of the changes and what they mean to us here at home. First, the Senate Bill 848. Florida is introducing a new regional market for stormwater treatment credits. It used to be that if a local business or developer wants to build, they had to handle 100% of their complex water filtration. I'm telling you, not sexy. Right there on their own lot. Now the state allows them to buy environmental credits from large state-approved regional water quality enhancement areas. If any of you want more information on this, email me and I'll get back to you. So I'll go on to something a little more exciting. If you're a homeowner or builder working on a single-family home with a septic system, and we have a couple of dozen of those sorts of properties in Atlantic Beach, House Bill 589 is going to cut through some government red tape. Effective immediately, our building departments in Atlantic Beach, Jacks Beach, and Neptune Beach, and throughout Florida no longer hold up your local building or plumbing permits while you wait on the state DEP to finish their final septic reviews. So to keep your project moving, we are going to have to modernize our internal systems to process applications to parallel with the state. But don't worry, we're still going to absolutely protect the environment. We'll be withholding the final CO until every single state environmental seal is safely secured. Under Senate Bill 302, the state is standardizing nature-based coastal protection, which clears a smoother pathway for projects like living shorelines and dune restorations. In Atlantic Beach, we're already actively designing a couple of permit-ready resilience projects, so we'll be better positioned to compete for state grant funding the second it opens and thus preserve local tax dollars. Moving into local governance, the legislature set some clear uniform boundaries for city administration and for cybersecurity. Under Senate Bill 1134, the state has prohibited local governments from using public tax dollars for certain diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI programs, offices, or vendor requirements. The legislature narrowed down what cities can fund under DEI, so we must review our policies and update them to make sure we're fully aligned with the state. At the same time, the state has given cities some stronger tools to protect us from cyber criminals. Senate Bill 7024 and House Bill 1085 have updated Florida's public records laws to protect our local infrastructure from modern threats. Specifically, we can now legally keep sensitive details about our city's IT networks, our cybersecurity vulnerabilities, and water utility control systems safe from public disclosure. We'll always champion open government and transparency, but we still absolutely will use these new exemptions to ensure that bad actors can't get their hands on the blueprints of our critical utility systems. A final major update addresses housing and development under House Bill 1389, which takes effect July 1st. The state has refined the Live Local Act by formally extending the Florida Fair Housing Act to all affordable housing developments. So essentially, the state has expanded its control over local zoning. They're now mandating that cities approve affordable housing developments on public land, on school district land, and certain religious properties, regardless of things like our local setbacks, heights, and density rules. The bill also includes a major waiver of sovereign immunity, meaning developers can actually sue local governments if they feel a regulation was imposed just because a project is designated as affordable. So to give you a real-life scenario of how this might look, imagine a public-private partnership where the city is a co-applicant on a proposal to build on city-owned land. If a developer uses this law to build to the maximum allowable height within 1 mile radius, the city is legally required to approve the site plan. Our staff won't be able to consider public input, zoning boards, and commissions won't be able to have a vote to alter or block the design. Fortunately, the League of Cities fought hard and secured some guardrails to completely shield our open spaces and our parks from these high-density mandates. Now, we've got a lot of work. To do in communicating these changes to our constituents, to our builders and others who will be pulling building permits. And there's plenty of work ahead of us as we navigate this ongoing shift, again, away from local decision making. And again, follow up with any of the city managers afterwards if you have any questions about this. And now for the sexy stuff, Mike.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay? I keep drawing the short straw in these presentations, and I'm not sure how. How many of you in the room were here in February when we talked about property taxes? A lot of you. Okay, good. I'm not going to rehash a lot of the information associated with that. We talked about how to read your tax bill, how our budgets are compared, etc. But before I dive into this, I just wanted to lay out a couple things. The first is we've had this information just as long as you have. This was a special session called last week by the governor. The governor made some very explicit statements as to what he wanted to see. The special session was called for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of this week. The session convened on Monday, or started on Monday, it convened on Tuesday, and at that point in time was when we were actually able to see what the final documents looked like with all of the amendments that were made on the floors for both the House and the Senate. So we've not really had a lot of time to dig into the details of this. There's a lot of questions. A lot of it will be subject to legal interpretation, which I am not an attorney, nor did I stay at the Holiday Inn Express on Beach Boulevard last night. But there are a couple things that I wanted to point out. And the first is the governor has been talking about this for the better part of the year and not really talking about the details associated with it. And only last week did he finally unveil his plan with details. Within those details were three very specific things that he indicated he wanted to achieve with this legislation. And those three things did not make it into the final legislation. And I think to a big part that maybe speaks to a little bit of the division that exists between the governor's office, the Senate, and the House. The first is he wanted the elimination of all homestead property taxes, period. And if any of you watched the special sessions, you saw that the school districts were pulled out, which means the schools will not be subject to the same limitations of this legislation. The second is the governor said that he wanted protections for public safety, specifically police and fire, and that their budgets could not be touched or reduced for a minimum period of time. That also did not make it into the final legislation. The third was, he also spoke about the establishment of a trust fund to help our fiscally constrained counties and cities. For those of you that may not know, when you get into the north central portion of the state, there are a lot of small communities, small counties, that even if they max out their millage rate under state law at 10 mills, they don't generate enough property tax to pay for their basic public safety features, police and fire, and they rely on funding from the state to help make up that difference. He indicated there would be a trust fund set up so that those financially or fiscally constrained counties and cities would have a dedicated funding source to help cover the gap difference. That also did not make it into the legislation. Just wanted to point out to you that the millage rates that we currently have in the three beach communities are a pretty good number below the average for other coastal communities that we take a look at around our area. You'll see the statewide average is 4.8, and all three beach communities come in under 4, with Jack's Beach at 3.99 and Atlantic Beach being 2.7 as the bookends. And I think that speaks a little bit to the valuation of the properties that we have and the fiscal conservancy that we have in our jurisdictions. And the reason I'm showing you this is, and we'll talk a little bit more about it in one of the future slides. Also wanted to just do a quick recap of where your property tax dollars go when you see the tax bill come in. This is based on a median home assessed at $322,000, which is about par for the beach area in terms of the assessed value people are currently paying taxes on. Call it a $4,800 tax bill. Only $750 of that tax bill goes to Atlantic Beach. The lion's share goes to Duval County School Board and City of Jacksonville. So even if you're talking about the Atlantic Beach portion and the Jacksonville portion going down substantially, you're still going to be left with probably a $2,000 tax bill predominantly being made up of the school board. The same thing can be said with Neptune Beach, very similar numbers, and also very similar with Jacksonville Beach. Again, lion's share, Duval County School Board, City of Jacksonville. Let's see. Just as a quick reminder with regards to budget sets up, when you take a look at our annual budgets that we prepare, they're not just your property taxes. They are a combination of property taxes, other revenue streams that come into the city, enterprise funds that are made up of revenues from your water system, your sewer system, solid waste, etc., all to come up with that giant pot of money. So when people say, you know, we need to lower the budget, well, there's only a specific portion of the budget that is actually subjected that you can touch. You can't necessarily reduce licensed operators at a water plant. It would be a violation of state law. You can't necessarily reduce the purchase of electricity through Beaches Energy, otherwise we have rolling brownouts. So portions of the budget aren't really subjective, other elements are. So to give you some examples, Atlantic Beach has a total budget of $57 million, and their general fund is approximately $21 million, 37%. Neptune Beach, 27 and 11. And for Jacksonville Beach, we have a $248 million budget, and of that, $33 million is general fund, or 13%. So again, all varying all because of the different makeups of our governmental structures within our jurisdictions. So if we wanted to talk about general fund expenditures, we'll go back to Atlantic Beach real quick. You can see the ad valorem taxes that are collected on the left side. Roughly 40% of the general fund comes in. In terms of where it's spent, about 40% goes out to public safety. So if you start talking about eliminating homestead property taxes, if it's not going to come from public safety, it has to come from those other 5 elements that are on their chart. The same thing applies to Neptune Beach. Ad valorem taxes compose of about 43%, and again, they spend 46% on police department alone. And this is it shown in the pie chart. And then for Jacksonville Beach, same thing, our ad valorem comprises 57%, and these are all the other revenues that we get for our general fund. And for our expenditures, we spend 52% on public safety. So again, roughly what we're collecting in terms of our ad valorem taxes pays for our public safety elements within our communities. So this is just to expand a little bit on what Maria showed you up front, the ad valorem reduction proposal, which went forward from the House and the Senate, and both were approved. The bill's focus so far is $150,000 homestead exemption on January 1st, 2027. So if this is voted in by the residents of the state of Florida in November at the ballot, $150,000 becomes the new homestead exemption on January 1st, 2027. The following year, that number will increase to $250,000 homestead exemption. Beyond that, there is language that says the exemption is indexed to Consumer Price Index on January 1st of 2029. And if any of you saw the interviews with House Speaker Dan Perez and I believe Senate bill sponsor, Senator Avila, they talked about the fact that when the original homestead exemption was set up back in the 1990s, it was roughly about half the value of an average home in the state of Florida, but it was never indexed to CPI at that time. If you look at what they're proposing now, they're proposing going up to $250,000, which is maybe a little bit more than half the value of an average home in the state of Florida, and then indexing it to CPI. And they may be looking at it from the perspective of correcting an error that was done 35 years ago. They also talk about requiring a schedule for the full elimination of homestead property taxes, but there's no guarantee as to what that schedule looks like or when it has to be done by. So I've already heard people ask the question, does that mean they have to do it? And if they do have to do it, when do they do it by? I don't know. I'm not an attorney. I'm not here to say what's going to happen. All I can say is there was a lot of statements made by bill sponsors saying that'll be for the next legislature to figure out, because the implementation plan is not there, just this language at this point in time. The other thing that they put out there was new residents to the state with less than 5 years of residency only qualify for the $50,000 homestead exemption to start. They have to have 5 years of residency before they qualify for either the 150 or the 250 or more than that, based on when they hit their 5-year mark. The 5-year residency gets waived starting in January 1 of 2030. And this one was not in the information we had last week, but non-homestead maximum annual increase is reduced from 10% to 5%. So non-homestead could be a second home, a short-term vacation rental. It could also be a hotel. It could also be a gas station, a convenience store, etc. Those have always been capped at 10% maximum increase per year. Now they'll be capped at a maximum increase of 5%. This is a continuation. If you read the language, these are the things that all ad valorem taxes can only be used on going forward. Public safety, education and public schools, finance or refinance infrastructure, same with natural resource projects. You can issue bonds and make debt service payments for obligations. A lot of communities have the question, if you're going to take away our revenue, but we've already bonded for an infrastructure project, how will we pay that back if we can't use these funds for it? So that got put in there. Obligations for retirement benefits of local government employees. And then the last one is very interesting because this got added in by amendment. You can fund operations and administration for cities and expenditures of governing bodies. So while A through F makes it think that you have a confined list, if you read item G in the legislation, it effectively says if the governing body, i.e. the city council, approves an expenditure of ad valorem funds and it's not deemed illegal to do so, then you can do it. So one might say, why have A through F if G basically says if your council agrees to it, you can do it? I don't know. I'm not an attorney, not at the Holiday Inn Express. Although I think I might stay there tonight to see if I get a better understanding of all of this starting tomorrow. So this just gives you some ideas of homestead versus non-homestead tax splits. In the event that over the next several years, the legislature does come back to the table and says, we're going to put a schedule in place, we're going to eliminate all homestead property taxes with the exception of schools, the school district, what would that look like? And these are some information that we showed in February, and they're related to 2025 budgets. So if our dollars look a little bit off from what 27 budget numbers would be, it's a 2-year difference. But you can see in here of the $8.4 million of ad valorem revenue for Atlantic Beach, 4.5 million of it is homesteaded, 54%. So if that were to all go away, they would lose 54% of their total ad valorem taxes. For Neptune Beach, it's just about 53%. And for Jacksonville Beach, it's about 40% citywide, which includes our CRA districts, and 20% just in the general fund, because again, our 2 CRAs, one has a lot of residential, one does not, so the numbers differentiate a little bit. So we tried to break this down a little bit more to show you the percentage of the general fund revenue that would be lost based on the 150 and the 250 exemptions for each of the 3 communities. I won't read through the numbers, but you can see that in year 1, we're all going to lose somewhere between 5 and 8.5% of our ad valorem tax revenues, and by the time it's said and done, it's anywhere from 8.5 up to almost 15% of revenue loss. And then this is just showing it a slightly different way in terms of the, again, if all homestead property tax goes away, this is the percentage of our general fund revenue that we lose in each of the 3 communities, and they're all right about 21-22%. So when you start taking a look at what are the options available, and this will be policy determination by our elected bodies to see what we want to do going forward. And again, all of this is on the premise that it passes, that A, it stays on the ballot, and that B, it passes the referendum. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. The Senate bill sponsor very specifically talked about the fact that the legislation they were putting forward was not going to restrict local governments on the creation of new or increase of fees to help offset the loss of revenue. So options that are available to local governments are, you can do nothing, you can just leave it the way it is and see what happens. You can do a millage increase, which there are state law requirements as to how much you can increase your millage in any given year based on a simple majority, supermajority, and unanimous vote of your council. There could be service level reductions, but it would specifically need to be services that are funded by general fund. Otherwise, it doesn't have an impact because the general fund is a specific pot of money. You can't make a cut in your water department and think it's going to offset the loss of general funds. You can impose new or increased fees such as park fees, fire fees, etc. Special assessments. For those of you that may be long-timers, you may remember going back to the 60s and 70s that local communities used to do assessments. The big one was roadway projects, installation of sewer systems, etc. What does an assessment mean? It means we come into your neighborhood, we've identified we're going to install a sewer system for 20 homes. The project costs $100,000. You divide $100,000 by 20 homes, you all owe $5,000, and we'll put you on a payment plan to pay it off over a period of time. Those types of projects were ultimately rolled into taxes and user fees because that was seen as a little bit regressive. There's every opportunity local governments could go back in time and say we're going to reconstitute assessments. As an example, in Jacksonville Beach, we use a portion of general fund for roadway resurfacing. I don't think our residents would like it if we said we'll be more than happy to repave your road, but your fair share is $6,220. How would you like to pay for that? But the good news is it should last you 15 to 20 years. They're probably not going to like that. But is it an option? Yes. There could also be a combination of A, B, C, and D in whole or in part. So I don't want to say what will happen in any community, but there will be tools available for all 3 city councils to look at to say, what do we want to do going forward? From a millage increase perspective, because this is one where you've heard a lot of people in the press talk about it being a tax shift. These are the millage rates that would be needed to offset the loss of all homestead property in each of the 3 communities. 1.5, 3.7, and 2.6 in order to compensate. Now, the reason we call it a tax shift is because while the homesteaded properties now go down dramatically, the new tax burden is increased on all the non-homestead properties. And again, it's the second homes, the STVRs, the hotels, the shops, the restaurants, etc., would be paying more. So this leaves us with the three big questions. You know, where could reductions be made in each of the three communities? For Atlantic Beach, this is the breakout of how they spend their general fund, and if they're going to need to, maybe in the next 3 or 4 years, figure out how to reduce it by over 20%. Those are the services that they have to choose from. For Neptune Beach, these are the ones that they have as well. And for Jacksonville Beach, these are the services to choose from as well. That's all I have on the property tax presentation. We still have a lot of questions. We have not yet gotten to the property appraiser. As I indicated, they gave us, actually that's not property appraiser information. Yeah. The property appraiser got us information the other day. The three cities have not had a chance to really dissect it and look into the formula that they used. We think we know how they did it, but until we have those conversations, we won't be able to confirm what those losses actually look like in terms of loss revenue. And then to talk a little bit about it from a process perspective, just because it passed the House and the Senate the other day does not mean it automatically goes to the ballot. My understanding from reading literature is that there is a 30-day window within which legal challenges can be posed to the ballot initiative. Someone could say that the ballot language is misleading. Someone could say that the title doesn't match the body of what's actually in the legislation. And that could end up getting tied up in some type of legal argument that takes it past the deadline for being placed on the ballot. If it goes through that type of a process and gets approved and ends up on the ballot, then it needs to pass by 60% plus one vote. You have to have 60% plus one vote in order for it to pass and become a constitutional amendment. I must be saying it right, otherwise I think I'd have someone in the back row saying I got it wrong. And then at that point in time, if it were to pass, that's our reality moving forward, and we'll figure out how to deal with it, because that's what we do as your local government, is figure out how to try and continue to provide you the services that you need, and to do so in an efficient and effective manner. And I'm not taking any questions, and I need to go to an appointment in 5 minutes, so I'm not.
Straight jacket.
Straight jacket, yeah.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
So we do have time for questions. I was excited that I think we're going to have questions from the audience. So if you do, please raise your hand. I will have someone bring the mic to you. As we ask, please just make sure that you ask the question. You don't give a dissertation before the question, so we make sure we cover and get everyone's participation here. So,
First question.
First question.
What's non-departmental?
That's items that are not covered under the budget that you would buy, that does not need its own department or...
Give an example.
Non-departmental would be a donation to the city, to a charitable organization. It's not in the general budget, but there is some money aside for non-departmentals. So odd stuff that you would buy that you don't buy every year, but it doesn't necessarily land under a department.
Okay, help me out with this sequence of events. We set a millage rate and set a budget in September, and then this elephant gets voted in November, and then we finish the 26 budget, and then we make the 27 budget according to the elephant.
So from a sequence perspective, in theory, all the communities have to establish a budget, not just the city of Jacks Beach, Neptune Beach, Atlantic Beach, but also our county, Duval County. We all need to adopt a budget prior to October 1. It's a state law, we have to do that. This will not be voted on until November, And if it goes into effect, the new homestead exemptions will be in place on January 1st of 27, which will affect our preparation of the fiscal year 28 budget. So the 27 budget, we can still prepare, but we need to be cognizant of the fact that this is out there. And by the time we're ready to adopt our budget, we should at least know whether or not this will be on the ballot and a possibility. If for some reason a judge says it's not ripe, it's not ready to go, and it's not going to be on the ballot, then it won't be on the ballot. But at this point in time, I think we need to start looking at it from the perspective that there's a high probability it will be on the ballot, and then a question mark as to whether or not it passes. So we need to start having those conversations with our elected officials now as we start preparing our budgets for 27. But the full impact won't be felt until our 28 budget is being prepared next year.
So, did it say we cannot reduce the police budget?
Up front, it just means that now.
The governor made the statement that he wanted protections for public safety. And he said police and fire budgets will be protected and they won't be reduced to below the levels that are existing today. The legislation that was adopted by the House and the Senate do not put those protections in place.
No more cars, Ricky.
Ricky gets no cars.
No more police cars.
Next question.
That's only I do. You know, as we all know, the
Mayor Loftus.
budget is.
So, Mike, forgive me if it was in the slides, I just didn't see it. You showed that the non-homestead properties would come down from 10% on an annual potential increase for assessed value to 5%. But there's no change, if I understand correctly, on the homestead properties would still have the Save Our Homes tax cap of 3% annually on assessed increases. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes. Yes, Mayor Office.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin and Mike. I have a couple questions. One, are you as city staff hamstrung on how you can communicate this to the public? Meaning, does it have to be in forms like a nonprofit with Beaches Watch, or can you put out a newsletter about this? My second question is, how does this affect our local intergovernment agreements? And then the third is, who is likely and hopefully filing a legal challenge?
Hi, I don't know the answer to number 3. Number 1, we're hamstrung in that we cannot do any advocacy. We are going to educate. We're going to sing from the same sheet of music, at least that's the plan. The 3 beaches cities, so this can be uniform communication, and we have a lot to do, assuming this gets on the ballot. But all of our communications platforms will be telling this story, both anecdotally, as far as the various ways that one person or the next would be impacted by this. So we're not hamstrung, a lot of educating to come. And in terms of the interlocal agreements, we'll see. We're going to have to dig in. And today we don't know the answer to that. City of Jacksonville, of course, is concurrently hit very, very hard. And so it's going to impact us. It's just we can't measure that impact at this point.
Any other questions?
Well, I have one. Would you go back to the slide that had the millage rate summary? Does the column for millage needed, what does that represent? Does that represent what we would need to bump up the millage rate to get the same revenue, or am I reading that right?
Correct. And the point that was trying to be made here was because the 3 beach communities have millage rates that are relatively low compared to other portions of the state, we actually have room to move our millage rates upward to compensate for the loss of ad valorem homestead property taxes that would be lost. Other communities that are already at 7 mills, 8 mills, 9 mills, they're capped at 10 under state law. So if they would need to increase by 4 or 5 mills to be whole, they can't do it. So this is just to show an option of if communities wanted to increase millage rates, you could do it with an understanding that that is a tax shift. At that point, you are taxing non-homestead properties at a higher millage than today to compensate for the homestead properties paying less.
So there's a pretty big range between Atlantic Beach and Neptune Beach, and I'm trying to understand that. Is that to do with the percentage of homesteaded properties?
Probably a combination of, homesteaded versus non-homesteaded. So don't forget that non-homesteaded is not just a house, it can also be commercial development. So Neptune Beach, having probably the lowest percentage of commercial development, would have to have the highest millage increase to compensate for it.
Okay, that sucks.
Excuse
me.
Thanks very much. Just a clarification. The loss of all homestead property exemption is not about 4.6 and the 2.6, etc., right? That is, it's just the one going from 50 to 150 to 250?
It's going from 50 to 150 to 250, and then there's question to the language that says the legislature shall create a schedule for the elimination of all homestead taxes. Because that's all it says, but it doesn't give a deadline, and it doesn't say by a date certain. So the question is this something that's a reality in 3 or 4 years? If the next legislature comes in and says, we're doing it now, or the next legislature could come in and say, we're fine to ride with the CPI for the next 2 years. And then the next legislature says, we'll ride for 2 years. It's undetermined. This is the worst case scenario.
Right, and that's the 25, 26 at the wrong.
These are using fiscal year 25 numbers.
And I guess that's the last thing on millage rate. I mean, I think having property value would be beneficial because everybody pays taxes knows it's millage times assessed value to get the total. I mean, there's a reason beaches are lowest because of the assessed value. That's the
Correct.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Okay, I'm back, sorry. So I understand that they kind of punted on the issue of the complete elimination of taxes on homestead properties to the next legislature, right? But by putting the language in this bill and getting it passed by referendum by the voters at 60% plus one vote, does that then give the legislature the ability in the subsequent year to create that matrix for complete elimination without having to go back to the voters on a referendum?
My understanding is yes. They would not have to go back to the voters because it's in the legislation. Again, if you read the wording, they could do it immediately or they could wait 10 years later.
I'm back as well. So in broad strokes, I feel like I asked this question in February. Besides, raising millage rates or cutting services, how do you think that this is going to affect, like, investment in beaches, like, businesses setting up shop, or new hotels coming in, or second property rentals, and then I guess also just, overall reflection on Florida. I mean, it sounds sexy to get rid of homestead taxes, but we're going to have to pay in some way. So I guess just broad strokes, what do you guys think? What's your crystal ball?
Yes, ma'am. I think you got a great question there. If the cities or the state chooses to raise the millage rate on the non-homesteaded or the homesteaded properties and the non-homesteaded properties, you're going to raise your rental properties. You're going to raise your businesses. All that's going to go up. All of our restaurants, hotels, everything. When you raise that, it trickles up. Your Airbnbs, your rental properties, that's all going to go up. So to answer your question, will that draw more people, to come in? I don't know. They're going to be paying more, and there's some tough decisions to be made by our elected officials coming up. Staff can recommend, but there's some very tough decisions coming. And just for Neptune Beach, first year, over $700,000. Second year, $1.3 million out of $11 million budget. Where do we cut? You know, and of course, personnel eat up majority of the budget. So you want to cut personnel, you know, or what services do you want to cut? Because that money has to come out of somewhere. You saw the charts. The beach is responsible. We have the lowest millage rate on, you know, similar cities to our size and everything. We're not at 8 or 9%. We're down there in 2s and 3s. And I consider that very responsible. And I think the beaches has a history of that. But the beaches also has a history of wanting service. And you know, when you call, you got your water, you know, you got a water problem, there's somebody there. When your electric goes out, there's somebody there. You need the police, I think everybody has less than 3 minutes response. And they're at your door. And so, like I said, there's some tough decisions coming. And it's going to affect services. You know, if we have to do with $1.3 million in Neptune Beach, it's going to affect services. You know, and our Better Jacks money's going away, what, 2 or 3 years? 2030. Yeah, 2030, our Better Jacks money's going away. I understand that's going to be replaced by the half-cent sales tax that was voted in by the voters to offset JSO's pension issues. I don't think we're going to get that money either.
We don't get that.
I'm sorry?
We don't get that money.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So that money, we're going to lose the half-cent sales tax money, but we're not going to get the portion that JSO or the city of Jacksonville is going to take to offset our pensions. And our pensions are expensive for the police. And that's not going to go down either. So there's some tough decisions that are going to have to be made. And like you say, you pay either way, it sounds like. You know, I live at the beach, so you know it's going to affect me personally. And so that's where we're at. And like I said, this is, you know, as Mike and Kevin said, this is probably going to have many changes. It's going to be challenged, but right now that's what we have to go by. And like I said, you know, something's going to be cut. You know, either that or you know you got to raise your non-homestead up. You know, to a point where you know the price of everything's going to go up because that's where it goes. It goes up. And it goes basically to the consumer. Yes, ma'am.
So could you, I know it's not related to the property tax issue, but the loss of the Better Jacks dollars, those are restricted, right? That we can
Yes.
only spend those on certain things,
Yes,
correct?
infrastructure, parks and stuff like that.
Infrastructure and
Yeah,
parks.
so that's going away, and it's in Neptune Beach, which is a lot of money. I think it was $300,000. And we have a big project going on at Charbo Park, along with some other money that we're able to get from COJ. You know, that's going to be gone. And when you have this other situation, where are you going to make up that $300,000 from?
Right.
You know, for the next thing that needs to be worked on, for the next infrastructure.
So my question, though, was about Jacksonville, for the benefit of everyone else that may not know. What are some of the services that we get from Jacksonville that we think would be impacted by this property tax reduction?
Probably let somebody, let Mike and Kevin have a little input on this. What I would say is...
I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Could you speak up a little bit? I'm so sorry. Speak into the mic.
No, I'm sorry. There we go. I'm sorry. Yeah, I would let Mike and Kevin have a little input on this, but for me, right off the bat, it could affect...
Libraries?
Yeah, libraries.
Well, all the constitutional officers, everything they do, courts and sheriff's office,
Yeah, all that can be cut back. I mean, they're in the same
tax,
situation,
elections office.
but it's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars they got to cut.
But it's going to impact us
Yeah.
too, because there'll be services we aren't going to be getting from
Yeah,
Jacksonville too.
right.
Right.
Jim, yes, sir.
I was going to say that Jacksonville is estimated to lose the county $300 million.
Yeah, first hit.
Yeah, first hit, $300 million.
So I know Sarah Bourne mentioned our ILA, and what we're talking about is some of these county services like fire and JSO services that we utilize here at the beaches. When and if they end up getting cut, those conversations happen at COJ. What does that look like for our 3 beach municipalities, as that station in Atlantic Beach is servicing not just Atlantic Beach, but it's servicing Neptune Beach, and then there's 2 stations in Jacks Beach. You've already worked out your ILA contract with Jack's Beach and JFRD. We are still in negotiations. I don't even know if I could be talking about this with Mayor Ford and Candace here. But in any case, are we getting a seat at that table when JSO and JFRD sit down with COJ council members to make those cuts? I mean, is it possible that they could just go ahead and take away one of our fire stations here? I know that there's one in Mayport, but we got to think about this. There are multiple stations throughout the beaches, and they will, be second due in or third due in. There's some that will come over from the intercoastal and service our areas here because it works as a county service. So what does that look like when they look at to cut 300 million? I mean, I know a fire truck alone is well over $1.5 million.
So to try and put a little bit into perspective, I don't think that the three of us have any idea at this point in time where Jacksonville is going to look for their cuts. Their reductions could be in services that have absolutely zero impact on us. It's something that could have a massive impact on us. If I understand correctly, our fire agreement is still in place and a valid contract. Is Atlantic Beaches still in place and valid?
Yes.
So if they were to stray from the level of service associated with the dollar amount we're paying, that would be a breach of contract. And my guess is we'd have to institute the Chapter 164 process before we actually file a lawsuit against them. So this is one of those things where they've had it only as long as we have. The only thing I can tell you is the sheriff's office budget is $1.2 billion. And it could be everything from, maybe they push out the construction of the jail. Maybe they reduce the number of JSO officers. Maybe they take it out of their parks department. Maybe they cut the Emerald Trail. We don't know. They've had it only for as long as we have as well, just a little over 24 hours at this point in time. But I think from a fire service perspective, Atlantic Beach and Jack's Beach have active contracts. And we have something that we can hold up and say, we'll go in front of a judge if we need to, for you to continue providing the service. You're not allowed to cut it.
I guess what would make me feel a little more at ease is that my city manager and all of our city managers, because our fire station, although it is in Atlantic Beach, says Neptune and Atlantic Beach. So I would like to know that you three are part of that conversation. So you can vie for, I know this is all what ifs, right? So if it gets on the ballot and if it passes 60%, this is stuff that I'd like to think about now. Because I'd hate for JFRD to make decisions that impact our beaches, and we don't have a seat at that table to say anything about it.
Yeah, and I think going back to the crux of the interlocal agreements between the city of Jacksonville and the three communities, we are to get the same level of service that the rest of Duval County receives from the countywide services.
Yeah.
So if they came in and said, we want to reduce one person per engine in Atlantic Beach Station and the two Jack's Beach stations, but they were also reducing one person per engine in every other station in Duval County, that might be deemed acceptable. But if they're only doing it in the beach communities, we'd have a problem, and they'd be in violation of the ILA as well as our service agreements.
And as your slide showed, I'm sorry, but as your slide showed, 40+% of the beach communities' taxes are going to COJ. So I'm not just talking about fire and our county JSO as their second due win, but there's libraries, as Sandy mentioned, JTA, all those extra things that we provide taxes to. That's a huge part of the narrative that I don't think many beach residents quite understand how much of their taxes actually stay within the beaches and how much is being contracted out to our county.
I'm going to talk to you with the water management district, and I'm not going to talk about water tonight, because I came here to learn, but I do understand the water management districts are on the menu as well, so we're a little nervous. Not going to be Clay, which is a way too heavy homestead tax base, which has been our Achilles heel, so I can't wait to drive back across the Buckman tonight and hear my officials tell me how bad it's going to be. But the other part of the education that you can help with your case maybe is the secondary and tertiary impacts. Right now, you're just talking the primary. Well, in those tertiary and secondary, those are the items, the nonprofits, the organizations, the neighborhood organizations that do things that protect your quality of life that government can't replicate realistically, and that gets impacted. And now you're really tearing apart quality of life of your communities that you work very, very hard to protect. That's another thing that would worry me. And I think a viable tactic, and I've kind of heard, is that you can get it pulled from this ballot and kick it to the tax. It's the TBRC, that once every 20-year tax and budget reform commission, which will stand up in 27, and they would do it, and then it would be a 28 issue. So maybe that's a realistic tactic to get it pulled from this ballot to go through that committee, which is designed for this kind of, just my.
Can you talk about that a little bit? Is there anything, can you expand on that, what he's saying?
Sure, just to talk a little bit about, does everybody know Doug from the Water Management District?
Yes. We do.
Hi, Doug.
AKA Mr. Blue. No, just kidding. But what Doug's indicating is, under our state constitution, every 20 years, the Taxation and Budget Reform Committee meets, and they take a look at wholesale changes and recommendations to the tax structure within the state of Florida. And I know that within our community, we sent messaging to both Rep. Michael and to Senator Yarborough that this particular issue, rather than working it on the fly in a 3-day window, already out of a regular session, really should have the time dedicated to it through the TBRC. Because the TBRC is specifically designed to do that. It has representatives from the different branches of our government that are assigned to it. They actually have, I think it's a 12-month window, if not longer, to actually study these types of things, do the financial analysis, come up with alternatives, supplements, addenda, etc., to make sure that it's been fully vetted. And if any of you watched the conversations or the floor discussion for the House and the Senate, there were references to this thing being a Frankenstein. There wasn't even an allowance for constitutional officers to be able to use ad valorem taxes. So the property appraiser who collects the money wouldn't be able to use any of the money to pay for their office. So people are like, how is the constitutional offices even supposed to function? Oh, we should probably do an addendum and put that in. Well, that probably should have been done in the first place. But the TBRC is meeting next year, and we'll see what happens over the next 30 days to 5 months. If it doesn't go on the ballot, hopefully it goes to the TBRC for a much more detailed analysis.
And that was discussed. I mean, there were people who came to the House and to the Senate, and they said, we urge you to wait and let them do that more detailed analysis. But that was not the decision that was made. So.
Okay, any more questions? We're going to wrap this up right on time. Wait, hold on.
I just want to add one more thing. I also think that there was no financial analysis that was done and presented to the House or the Senate as part of their deliberation. Is that correct? They had my understanding was they had the bill language and that was it. And a lot of times when they get bills, they get an analysis that the staff does to say, this is here's the financial impact. And they didn't have that to make the decision, so that's concerning too. They made the decision without that information.
On the ballot, do they have to have something about a financial impact? Isn't that something that they talked about being on a ballot when you come up with, do away with the pigs or whatever?
I don't know, I don't know what the statute covers on that.
Do away with the pigs.
I don't think it would be.
You should ask for the 3 Beaches attorneys to come back and answer these questions.
Okay. All right. If we have that's all it for questions. Okay. So thank you, gentlemen, for coming and trying to explain this very complex and
wow.